So today we're going to be talking about how to diet without dying, with an emphasis on enjoyment and convenience to reduce friction and create sustainability. And if you want to lose weight, a calorie deficit will be necessary. And if you want to lose weight for an extended period of time, you're going to have to enjoy the foods you eat. That means eating food that tastes good to you. But to create that calorie deficit, some form of restriction will be required. And if you want this diet to be sustainable, enjoyment is what creates sustainability. So when you're choosing a diet, my advice is choose one that feels the least restricting to you. And there are 3 options of restriction that you can choose. One is a macronutrient restriction or a food choice restriction. There's examples of these like a low carb diet. That would be a keto diet, the Atkins diet, the carnivore diet. You could also do a low fat diet, or you could cut out meat altogether and do a vegetarian or a vegan diet. Or you could do something called the paleo diet, which is basically just eating the food that cavemen ate during the Paleolithic era. So that's no processed foods, only foods that grew in the ground or had a mom or dad, as they say. And the next option is a time-restricted diet, often called intermittent fasting. That's where you choose a window where you can eat. A common window is an 8-hour window of eating and a 16-hour window of fasting. So the example would be you can eat from noon to 8 p.m. and then the rest of the day you're fasting. And then your third option is calorie tracking, which is also known as if it fits your macros. So you can basically just eat whatever you want. As long as you're hitting your calorie and protein goals for the day, then you should lose weight successfully. So choose whichever form of restriction you like. If you're anything like me, you'll choose calorie tracking because you can still eat whatever you want. You just have to control your portions, and if you hit your calorie and protein goals, you should successfully lose weight. Technically, you could eat all Twinkies and follow a Twinkie diet the way Mark Hobb did, a professor at Kansas State, and still successfully lose weight. The only problem with that diet is it won't be very sustainable, and you're not going to enjoy it very much. Probably because you'll be hungry most of the day. Now, what derails a diet fastest? I believe it's hunger. Hunger makes you desperate, and you don't make your best decisions when you're desperate. Let's think back to the last guy or girl you brought home from the bar. I'm sure at some point in that night you were desperate. Maybe it was because your girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you. Maybe it was because the person you actually like was talking to someone else that night. Or maybe the bar was about to close and you felt like you had to make a move before time ran out. Either way, the next morning, all you were left with was a serving of regret. Desperation makes you more impulsive. It impairs your judgment and makes you value short-term relief, immediate rewards over long-term consequences. And that's what hunger does to your food selection. That's why my strategy when dieting is to choose foods that keep me full for long durations, so I don't have to feel desperate when I'm choosing foods throughout the day. And it's especially helpful if the foods that keep you full aren't very high in calories. To choose foods that meet these criteria, I mainly look at 2 metrics on nutrition labels alongside calories. That's protein and fiber. Protein is so important, number 1, because it helps you feel full for long durations because it's digested slowly. There's research that shows eating a high protein diet alone correlates with weight loss. And I think that's because people just don't feel as hungry when they're eating a high protein diet, and it makes sustaining a calorie deficit easier. Protein also helps maintain muscle as you're losing weight, and it's especially helpful if you're performing a resistance training program consistently. And that will lead to more fat loss as you're losing weight, is what people really want. They want fat loss, not just weight loss. And third, protein also takes more energy to digest than the other macronutrients. Roughly 20 to 30% of the calories consumed from protein are used to digest it, compared to 5 to 10% for carbs and roughly 0 to 3% for fat. Because protein is such an important part of a weight loss and a fat loss diet, you'll want to enjoy eating it, and you'll want it to be easily accessible to you. Of the 3 macronutrients, carbs, fat, and protein, protein is the least conveniently available. You can go out to eat or find prepackaged food that is high in carbs and fat and high in calories, but it's hard to find convenient sources of protein that's also relatively low in calories, and that's where we want our meal preps to solve this problem. Meal prep will allow you to have lower calorie, higher protein meals that you can eat throughout the week that support your goals of weight loss. And that's where my recipes that I share on this channel can come into play, and I'll be talking more about making protein taste good in the future. But we want to find lean sources of protein that are relatively convenient and easily accessible to us. A lean source of protein is one that is relatively low in calories and high in protein. These are very hard to find, but that's why sources of dairy like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese are so common in the fitness industry, because they're pre-prepared, they're very versatile, and they taste good, and really the macros on them are pretty incredible. So I highly recommend Greek yogurt and cottage cheese to anyone who can eat them. But if you're lactose intolerant, maybe you can find a lactose-free version. But if you're looking for other convenient lean sources of protein, you have the meal prep options. You also have Real Good and Bare chicken nuggets and chicken tenders that I really like. You got eggs, chicken sausage. Obviously you got whey protein and other protein powders that you can get creative with. I'll put a list on the screen here of other lean protein sources that you can try implementing into your diet and see which ones you like the most. All right, let's talk about fiber now. So fiber is helpful for someone trying to lose weight because it is digested slowly and it helps people stay full for long durations. But it also improves our gut health by decreasing our risk of colorectal cancer, and it also aids in digestion and promotes regular bowel movements. So really everyone should be trying to eat fiber throughout their day, not just people trying to lose weight. And fiber is what makes a carbohydrate complex. And convenient sources of fiber are the typical foods that you think of when you think of healthy foods that grow from the ground. So that include beans and legumes. So you got garbanzo beans, black beans, pinto beans, lentils, edamame. But it also includes whole grains like oats. Convenient sources of fiber also comes from fruits and vegetables. So strawberries, blueberries, bananas, apples. Vegetables would include like broccoli, spinach, carrots, onions, peppers, you name it. Those are all good sources of fiber, and they're good to include in your diet. And one of my favorite convenient sources of fiber are these carb balance or high fiber wraps. This is the La Banderita version, and per tortilla it's 90 calories and 18 grams of fiber. So with modern food science these days, they have these fiber enriched foods like these fiber wraps. There's also fiber brownies and other Fiber One products. The name of the dieting game is decreasing hunger, because hunger makes you desperate for food, and that desperation is going to impair your decision making. And we don't want to test your willpower often, so eating foods that are lower in calories and higher in protein and fiber will help keep that hunger devil at bay. And I live by the 80-20 rule, so if you eat these filling foods, 80% of the time you're going to be on the right path to losing weight. Now I've given you options on foods you can eat that'll keep you full throughout the day. The next question is, how do we make these foods taste good? And I plan on addressing that question in future videos.